It was a pretty traumatic thing that was upsetting for a while, but now, 2 years later, is just something we all laugh about. What's the worst thing that's happened at your family gathering? Oh damn, my boy is back for another story time, so good to see you. Andrew missed you, dap me up bro. Just kidding, this is a video, but I'll take virtual dap. Or even better, you can subscribe and like the video. Really helps me out my dude. If you do, I'll give you access to Belle Delphine's OnlyFans. Let's cut the chit chat and get on with the stories. My alcoholic uncle got so drunk at his own daughter's wedding that he pissed on the wedding cake in front of half the wedding party. He quit drinking after that. Proposed to my girlfriend at my birthday party and she said no, then told me she had been cheating on me. This was post-cake. My 60-year-old aunt showed me her new boobies and told me she'd take my V card and show me what good pussy feels like. She did this at the dinner table. Relatives showing off their weird-looking baby and people trying to not say anything awful about it. Being one of the first to greet them, and thus having no warning, all I could come up with was oh, that's a baby. I guess no blood was spilled, but I felt like dirt afterwards. Was celebrating an uncle's birthday and we realized about 15 minutes into it that grandma died. Everyone lost their mind because she was 75 and seemed fine 10 minutes before. Died of a massive brain aneurysm. Whole family was devastated. I still took some cake. My grandmother tried to shoot herself in the front yard because my mother wouldn't let me and my siblings, 6, 4 and 2, ride sitting on the back hood of my uncle's classic convertible during their neighborhood 4th of July parade. She was angry that no one would be able to see our outfits if we were seated inside the car and while trying to shoot herself, accidentally grazed my grandpa in the process. Good times. Edit. It's called a trunk. Great-grandma's funeral in Arkansas. I have some distant third cousin, named Stormy, again this is Arkansas, and we are all gathered around the grave, and as the preacher starts to lead us in prayer, you hear this awful noise. Every turns to look and there is Stormy swinging an armadillo around his head by the tail. One of my other cousins got him to put the armadillo down so we could finish the service, but I don't recall ever having seen him at another family gathering since then. Edit. Yes, Stormy is male, he was about 19 at the time. Yes, the armadillo was alive, apparently it had a nest or was taking a nap what armadillos do in their spare time, under a nearby bush. Sounded kinda like a cat rejecting the advances of an unwanted lover. My favorite uncle was an early casualty of the AIDS epidemic. He was gay and out long before it was in any way acceptable, think small southern town, late 80s. At his funeral, my grandmother was telling everyone he was a junkie that shared needles just to avoid admitting he was gay to her church friends, as if that were a more respectable way to have gotten the virus. Thanksgiving about 1985, family gathering at my parents' home. Mom, dad, brother, sister, grandmas, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. All watching football. Cousin picks up the remote to mess with the volume, but turns on the VCR on accident. Full-blown porno fills the screen. Dad leaps, grabs the remote and fumbles frantically to turn it off. Bible thumper brother and sister-in-law snatch up their kids and leave. Cousin says, boy, that sudden death can really get intense. We had a huge family dinner at a very fancy restaurant. My great aunt decided to move a very fancy pot of flowers with some peacock feathers stuck in it out of the way. In this case, out of the way meant right above the candles. It turns out peacock feathers burn incredibly fast and produce a lot of smoke. The whole restaurant had to be evacuated. To be honest, it wasn't really that bad, the dinner had been incredibly boring. 14-year-old me certainly thought the fire made things more interesting. Introduced to a distant cousin for the first time who was a 10, she was beautiful, and I was told that she was deaf. I had never met a deaf person. We were both 15 years old. I shook her hand and said to my brother who was standing next to me, she is a babe. She started to laugh. I read lips, she said. Also, if you think about it, handjobs from girls who speak sign language are technically blowjobs suo. This didn't happen to me, but I watched it happen and it was awful. My cousin was pregnant from a guy who she had only been dating for a few months, but he was a good guy. On Christmas Eve she invited him to our family gathering, and when we were exchanging presents, he grabbed a small box from the tree and was 2 seconds from getting down on one knee when that uncle jokingly says, "God, I hope you're not proposing." Everyone laughs and this poor guy is in a half-bent knee half-standing pose and just looks up at that uncle and slowly powers through it and slowly gets down on one knee and proceeds to ask her if she'll marry him. She said yes and they're engaged, but it was one of the worst 45 seconds of my life. My dad got married again when I was 22. I used this excuse to start drinking at 9 a.m. Needless to say, at around 1 or 2 the next morning I am so ducked up and ready for bed. I don't remember making it back to my dad's house. I lived in the basement apartment. Apparently after getting home I proceeded to strip off all my clothes and get into my dad and his new wife's bed. Everyone else is still partying until late, and finally the happy couple decide they've had enough and want to retire to their bed. Stepmom comes in and finds me passed out, so she figures she'll wake me up by stripping the blankets off me. Boy was she surprised as naked me gets up and belligerently yells at her for waking me up. I then argue that it's my bed and I go to get something to drink in the kitchen. Another 20 of my relatives get the pleasure of taking in my naked ass. With some coaxing they manage to get me in some clothes and to my own bed. I wake up 6 hours later with no recollection of the night's events. Edit. I'm a guy, and hooking up with my stepmother would not be an option. Not happening. Not enough booze in the world to make that woman attractive. My brother threw a temper tantrum at age 30. It has been pretty common for him to blow up about little crap all his life. It was his youngest daughter's 2nd birthday, and he was in a crappy mood all day, even though our mom and his wife had taken care of everything. It came to a head when it was about time to do the cake. It was a kind of tall cake with a carousel on the top. The dog bumped into the table, and the cake shifted a little, almost knocking the carousel over. He stood up and said something like, "God damn it. Your ducking dog is ruining everything." My mom said, "Calm down, the cake is fine." He got in her face and said, "Don't tell me what to do, bitch." At that point my brother and stepdad got up and kind of surrounded him ready to kick his ass. After a few seconds he finally stormed out of the house and left. I feel the need to reiterate at this point that he was 30 years old and it was his daughter's 2nd birthday. Our worst family story happened at my aunt's wedding. My aunt, a white lady, was marrying a Korean American man whose parents really wanted him to marry a Korean woman. During their entire engagement, his parents would invite random Korean women over for dinner to try and sway him. Eventually, they seemed to get over the fact that he was definitely going to be marrying a white girl. On the wedding day, his parents seemed politely resigned to the situation. His father actually even danced with my aunt at the reception, so we were all relieved. After dancing, his father approached the mic, and we all expected him to give a toast about how my aunt was so great that he overcame his prejudices or something. Instead, he said, in his thick Korean accent, "This is abomination, like German Shepherd mating with poodle." My aunt ran out of the room crying, and my grandfather casually walked up and punched him in the face. In front of 200 wedding guests. People cheered. Someone got stabbed at my wedding reception. So, that was fun. It was my brother and sister's dad and his girlfriend who had gotten into some drunken, knife-wielding fight in the parking lot. Edit. Since there are so many questions on this, my brother and sister are technically my half-brother and sister. We share a mother, they share a mother and father. I had no idea this was so uncommon. Clearer version. This was just a quick comment that I assumed would get buried, so let me be more clear about what happened. Basically my half-brother and half-sister have a dad, let's call him Loserface, who came to my wedding reception with his trashy, half-his-age girlfriend, who we will call Slutface. Loserface and Slutface proceed to get plastered and end up in the parking lot in a drunken fight. I was not present for this, and we all just heard pieces of it from multiple people. The story is that Slutface pulled a knife and tried to stab Loserface in her drunken anger. There was more fighting. Slutface sliced her own hand open. This is not disputed by any party. Slutface then proceeds to run around the hall bleeding all over the place. So no one actually got stabbed. Sorry for the confusion on that and the family tree. It was a pretty traumatic thing that was upsetting for a while, but now, 2 years later, is just something we all laugh about. And I haven't seen or spoken to Loserface or Slutface since, but they are still together and have since had a baby that they don't have custody of, which should paint a picture to the kind of people I am semi-related to. Thanks for watching. What did you think of the story time? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more story times.